Awesome. So Michelle, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? Tell me what you're doing right now, what you would like to be doing, where you're at, stuff like that.
So I work at sorry, I have to be a little quiet, but I work at a company called Star Chefs, and uh I am the designer. So I create the magazines that we have, and I do 5 magazines a year.
Okay, very
Um
cool.
I am really into illustration, and a lot of the stuff that I do is has been kind of self-taught. But I did go to school for design. So, but a lot of the stuff is still self-taught because I didn't like go to like a good design school. I went to like a school that just had a small design program. Um, so yeah, I'm kind of like doing illustration and kind of trying to figure out um, how to find clients that I can do illustration with. So kind of freelance with illustration that I can do on the side.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Have you attempted any of this at all previously?
Uh, yes, that's kind of what I've been working on for like probably like 5 months.
Okay.
I've been
What are
trying.
some of the what are some of like the how are you going about finding clients at the moment for these like more
Uh,
illustration based projects and freelancing?
so I'm not mostly just kind of like posting on social media more. I started a project for myself where I create an illustration a week that is like chosen by Instagram followers. So I've been doing that for like 15, 16 weeks. And I plan on continuing to do that for a year. I mean, obviously, it can get a little frustrating when like I get nowhere, and it doesn't seem like I've had any growth in the past 15 weeks, which I know comes with time and stuff. But yeah, I'm not really sure how to go about it, or yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I could definitely those like every week projects can definitely be tough.
Yeah,
Um and
yeah,
frustrating for sure.
especially with like a full-time job and life and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, it's not easy.
Mm.
Okay, so you're not currently like actively trying to get clients in that sense, but you're doing like social
I
media
like,
stuff.
yeah. I mean, I am, but like I don't know if I'm necessarily going about it the right way.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about before we look at your website, let's talk about like this idea of getting clients, right? So I am from the mindset or the opinion that posting on social media is great, right? I do it a lot. You may or may not have seen one of these videos from TikTok, but I
That's how I
will
found
be the
you. Yeah.
first, cool. I will be the first to say that is not how I get my clients at all. Like,
Okay.
it is not the primary way I get clients. It is not, I don't go into it looking for clients necessarily. If anything, it is more so, it is a demonstration of my experience and, kind of like a way to emphasize that. When people do
Mhm.
reach out to me, yeah, I've had some people reach out to me from social media, but I've also had people that I've worked with in the past or just have found me somehow and have mentioned like, hey, I saw your videos or whatever, and I want to work with you. And that has been a nice way to like encourage and kind of like really facilitate that relationship of like, you already know who I am. This is what I do. This is how I sound. This is what I talk about. And if that jives well with you, great. But I don't come at it as like social media is my one and only way to get clients. I don't think for me, I don't like the post something in the atmosphere and hope that someone will eventually come back and pay me for it necessarily. So like that's not how I go about it. What I do
But
preach a lot and what I do think is really important as a designer, as a creative, especially an illustrator, is to like really start forming those relationships with the people that will eventually, you know, have the budgets or have the money to hire you. So like I talk about, you know, getting on LinkedIn and reaching out to, you know, those individuals. Now, as an illustrator, you know, that's going to be a little different from, say, I mean, especially if you're like going after, what the heck? Sorry, just reading messages, random messages. Anyway, oh, that's never mind. It's just my friend. Thought it was like a weird thing going on. But like that, like the people that you're going to want to talk to are different than obviously a designer who's like trying to go for the head of a studio, which like you could also do as well. Now I'm thinking about it and saying it out loud.
So it's kind of like a little bit of both,
Totally.
but
Yeah.
yeah.
It's like I have this expertise in illustration. You can hit up agencies and get in contact with them and let them know about that. And if they have a project that comes, you know, in the doors that they need an illustrator for, like you're available. Immediately where my head goes with illustration is like editorial. Like I follow a lot of illustrators that constantly share work for like what they've done for the Wall Street Journal or the Post or the Times, whatever it is. And you know, like obviously having a relationship with like editorial teams is like a really practical way to get illustration work. It's a really, you know, just a relationship that like makes sense. Like we create content, we need spot illustrations and illustrations for our website content, our print content. Like that seems to be a place that a lot of illustrators tend to sort of like gravitate towards. But again, it's like that same idea of like, I believe in hand-to-hand combat where you're like messaging these people, getting on their radars and letting them know that like you're available for work and this is the stuff that you do. So I think that that's really big. Where I can't really talk about a lot is, and you actually kind of are like in a nice little situation. You're a graphic designer by day. You do illustration as like the thing that you enjoy doing and you'd like to be doing. Like nothing stops you from approaching brands or businesses that can utilize both of those skills from you, right? Like think of it as like a Trojan horse. Like, hey, I'm a graphic designer. I noticed, you know, I mean, I'm a graphic designer. I noticed that you guys are doing a lot of stuff on social media. I'd love to work with you. I also do illustration as well. And that's where like I stand out because now I have these two skills, right? Like it's like I'm a graphic designer, which like clicks a little bit more for people of like, cool, that means you can make stuff. And then like illustration being like a strong suit of yours can be like, yeah, and I also have opportunity to work on other stuff for you guys if you need. So like that's a really good way to approach it. I've always liked, I mean, do you see yourself? I don't want to get like too existential or like too ahead where like,
I
but like
love it. Get
what
existential.
what like where do you see yourself like in a couple of years? Would you call yourself a graphic designer? Would you call yourself an illustrator? Like what does that look like for you?
I like having the ability to do both.
Okay.
I think I think it's very important that I'm able to be an illustrator with a design background. Um, and I don't think like I think knowing both of those is very important to me and like to create an interesting piece. And I feel lucky that I have that because not all illustrators have that design background. Not all designers have that illustration background. So, or like are able to illustrate rather. So I would like to continue having both.
So you're a creative studio,
Yeah, a
pretty
one
much.
person creative studio. Yes.
The thing that I like to kind of poke at a bit, right, is because I've had designers come to me before. They're like really good at illustration and they also either have a background in design or they kind of like vice versa, design and then went to illustration, whatever it may be. And the thing I like to kind of poke on is, you know, you don't have to pick one, but think of it as like what is going to be your first foot in, like what is going to be that first step out? Like, you know, are you a designer? Are you an art director? Are you a studio? You know, like how do you want to present yourself to allow you to fit into these, not fit in, but like to present these opportunities where you do both, right? The thing that I see a lot is people get sort of like not confused. They just like don't know how to, I don't want to say pick one, but like they don't know what they want to lead with almost, which I think kind of makes it easier whenever you're talking with like a client or for anyone to understand what you do, because it's hard to say that you're both, right? Or it's hard to like present the case like, yeah, I'm a graphic designer and an illustrator, because immediately it goes to people's minds of like, okay, well, what are you good at then, right? Whether you're good at
Right.
both or not, like I'm not questioning that, but like for them, it's not always like a, oh, so you like kind of mess with both and you may not be good at either, whatever it may be. And so like, if you want to lead with illustration, that's totally fine. If you want to lead with a designer, that's totally fine. You don't have to get rid of either of them or like do one or the other, but think of it more as a way of like, how do I want to present myself and really show that I can do both of these things really well. And I think that's like kind of important, because again, you're from what I'm hearing, it's like you like design, you like illustration, you like both of them. You are doing more work on your own as an illustrator. So how do we kind of like package that up in a way for people to then like digest it and allow them to see like the value in working with you?
Okay.
Does that make sense? Or was that just like a bunch of?
No, that made sense, honestly. That like hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, and like I'm a big fan of like making up a fairy tale in your head of like, and I say fairy tale lightly, but like the sky is the limit and nothing's stopping you from saying like, I am a creative studio, like, or I like run a studio and we do, using we language, right? Like immediately changes the conversation. Like we do design and illustration. Like that's what we specialize in. Like it is a bit of like, and I think, where are you based out of?
New York.
Yeah, I mean, it's New York. It's
Yeah.
fake it till you make it, like,
Yeah.
so like there's nothing stopping you from like having this sort of like, kind of like sense of yourself where like, you could do both confidently and be able to do that. What I've said before in the past,
I do that actually though.
so there you go.
My whole
Really just
vibe.
start to lean in it, just lean into it. I've said in the past to other designers, like, depending on where they're at, like when you're first starting off, like, I think it's really important to kind of like focus in on what it is exactly you want to do, because in those, like in that first opportunity that you get your first role, you'll figure it out and like you'll learn a lot more about like what it is that you ultimately want to do or how you want to present yourself. But when you're at this point where you're like kind of I'm guessing you have a couple of years of experience.
Yeah.
And like now it's like, okay, I've learned these things. What else do I want to go off and do? Or how do I want to go do those things? This is when the question of like, okay, how do I want to present myself? Because when you're young, again, I say a lot of this stuff jokingly and lightly, but like you're nobody, like you're just another designer, like trying to just like grab hold of life and pay rent, and after a couple of years of doing that, you're like, okay, cool, I can pay rent, and now I need to like actually start to like maybe make a little bit more money or like start to progress in like my goals, whatever it may be. And so this is where that question comes back of like, how do I want the world to see me? How do I want to be looked at, whether that's like through my work or how I present myself, how I speak about stuff, whatever it may be.
Yeah, that's honestly pretty much where I'm at. You hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what I'm kind of trying to figure out on my own, and like been talking to people all over the place, trying to get advice from all different kinds of people and all different points of their career, and just trying to see like where I should be pointing myself into, because right now I feel like I'm like pulling myself into a million different directions and like I can't really do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say like, where should I point myself based on other people, right? Like I'm not like that is a really hard, not a hard thing, but like when you say it like that, right? Like I want to point myself in the direction of like where these other people are going. And I don't think you have to do that anymore, right? It used to be kind of like that, where it's like, cool, I see a great creative director, like I want to be that way. Like I used to be that way. And now what I think is happening more for myself is like, I have seen those directions, they absolutely work, you know, becoming a creative director, being in a full-time job, whatever it may be. And what I'm saying to myself is like, I have these things that I want to do. I want to do them. I give myself time, like, you know, I'll say like a year, whatever, a couple of months, and let's see where things shake out and then reevaluate, like, is this direction ultimately I want to go, right? Like, it's really hard to be like, okay, I'm going to continue to do this one thing and that's going to get me all the way to the end of life or whatever it may be. But like for creatives, I mean, I say this like for creatives, it could be for other people, but again, speaking as we kind of share a bit of that, it's hard to like, you know, just say like, okay, I'm only going to do this one thing, because then like we get anxious and we're like, oh my God, I'm only going to do this one thing. Right. But like,
Mhm.
instead, like give yourself the time or give yourself like a window to say like, I'm going to do this one thing. And then I'll think about doing other things afterwards, you know?
Mhm.
And that kind of comes in like, you know, waves, like whether you actually stick to it or not. I'm finding myself now after like now being freelance full-time for a year now, and having worked like in a full-time for 10 years, like now I'm like, okay, I did a lot of that messing around and like pointing my head into other different things. Now I know a little bit more of what I want to do, and I want to give myself a year to do that and then decide if that's the thing. Um, you said you wanted to, you want to stay at your full time and then just slowly pick up? Okay. Okay. Yeah. Someone's holding a knife behind the camera. Okay. So, um, this is the thing, right? Start making connections, start getting on people's radar. That's the one thing. Do you want to go into another full time? You could just shake your head.
Uh,
Okay. So you like brand agency, like what? One or two, A or B.
like like either,
Okay.
honestly,
Okay. So
either.
then,
I actually really enjoy working in publishing, but like the publishing industry is something that I've looked into, I've spoken to people, and I don't think I want to touch it anymore. It's
sure. Okay.
like,
So I think you need to, again, I think you need to go back to that question of like, how do you want to present yourself for these other opportunities? Because I think, again, it's, in my experience from friends, it's kind of hard for an illustrator to be applying to roles, because I feel like those roles are fewer than say like design roles, right? Which again, you know, that's like, it's just the market, and there's nothing stopping you from saying like, yeah, I'm a designer, I've been doing it for the last X amount of years, but I also illustrate a ton, and that's going to give you an advantage, right? Like look at it
mhm,
that way rather than just saying like, I don't even know about this illustration stuff.
right.
um let's look at your portfolio
Mhm,
website, because I think like this is a good opportunity to talk about that if you're looking for new opportunities, whether that's like agency or full-time.
mhm,
um we need to figure out how to like summarize some of this stuff and build out some case studies
mhm,
to make it a little bit more clear of like what you're good at
mhm.
and what other skills you have to offer. Because right now your website is just illustration, right? It's just like, here's all the stuff that I've made,
Yeah.
right?
If you click into each one, it like takes you to like um kind of more of an like explaining
Okay,
and
cool.
how it looked in layouts. Yeah.
Yeah. So if this is all like one client, is this all
Mhm.
one client or
Um,
one like
most
place?
Yeah, most of it is here, but then some of it's like my personal work.
Okay. Do you have other work within the realms of design and illustration separate from those two, separate from full-time and personal?
Honestly, not really, no.
Okay. So
Like
then this
a
is
couple of school projects, but
okay. So then this is the thing that I think needs to happen is like, if you've done a lot of time at this job, you need to figure out what are the like key projects that you worked on that are more than just say like, we needed an illustration for this layout, this is what I did, right?
mhm,
Like what are some, and or like can you come up with like, I need a big headline to kind of like capture a bunch of work. So like maybe, and again, I'm just kind of like going off of just like making things up, right? Like, did you work on a series of projects at your job that were like all food, right? That like you can like put into one thing that kind of like describes like this was the concept for these books, or they have like a big focus on like food and whatever. And
so it's a culinary magazine. So it's
totally
all
okay.
food.
Maybe that wasn't okay, but maybe it's like food from like the Adriatic or something. Like what are the themes that we can pull out from this, right? Like if it's all food, great. Is it food that's made in like South America? Is it food that was made from like super simple ingredients? Like what are the themes that can kind of like connect a bunch of dots to like a bunch of different pieces that you've done? Because what happens is I click into one of these, I only see this, and then that's it. I leave, cool, great. She did some like spot illustration. Awesome. But I need some sort of articulation from you, some sort of description from you to really like demonstrate how much like responsibility and how much experience you have working within this role. I need to know like who you've worked with, how do projects start, what is the process for like your for like a turnaround for something like this, right? Like how did these things get finalized? The other thing I would push you to do is if there is anything that has been printed and is living in this world, find those, photograph them, or figure out like a really, really nice mock, like a nice mock-up to get those. Because again, what happens is you end up with a lot of flat images, right? And then after a while, your eyes just kind of go numb, your brain just shuts off and you're like, okay, flat image, great. Awesome. Let's see what else. Yeah. Like if it's design, like if your full-time is design, I'd also want to see some of that stuff too, right? Like I want to see that sort of like we're kind of getting it here, right? I'm guessing this is a school project. Yeah, it's a school project.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but like this is starting to touch on what I'm talking about, right? Like there's a little bit more meat here for me to like sink my teeth into to really understand, to like kind of get an idea of the work, right?
So you would say that like in each page that I have, just like put more and explain more behind the process, so there's more to scroll through.
Yeah, but I mean,
like
I've seen some really good
all the magazines printed. Like I have that. I just
okay, cool.
Would need to take the photo and put it in. That's not a problem. Or like obviously find a mock-up that I could do, but I feel like it'd be easier to just take a photo of what I have.
I think if we go back to that idea of that, like what you said at the beginning, where it's like, I work at this company and every year we do 5 magazines. That's 5 case studies or 5 different projects that are like big and meaty that you could potentially like sink into, right? And I think also you're missing that here. You're missing like, hey, I'm a designer and illustrator at this company. I work on the team. Like there's no introduction immediately here unless I go into your about page, which I think is important. And those 5 magazines sound like to me like the lifeline of the company, or like a very big initiative from the company to be like, yeah, I work on this, I get to work on this every year, like, and the 5 magazines get pushed out to however many thousand or million people that my work gets to be seen by. Like I think it's also important to have like that grounding of like, yeah, we do 5 magazines. Our mailing list includes, X amount of people. Our readership is blah, blah, blah. What, like those statistics also will help.
Okay.
Stuff like this, like layouts like this, to me read as like a quote. I just got off another review, like using this like a quote unquote playground, right? Of like things that I work on that I like post to my website to kind of keep people knowing that like I'm working on work. But again, at the end of the day, you need to have more of a voice about like what it is you do coming from you. I don't know if this is a great example. I haven't looked at this guy's website, but let's look at it. Jake Williams, London Illustrator. This guy's also on TikTok and we chat every once in a while. So this is the first time I'm seeing his website. And what I will say about it is So I know Jake works with a agent, like he has someone that books him for work. So they're doing
Mhm.
that, everything that we just mentioned, like having the, things like articulated on your website, they're doing that for him, right? So like already this isn't a great example in terms of like how you should present your work, but the one thing that Jake does really well is like, here's the full thing. Here's like more of like what we have. Like at the end of the day, what happens with someone like Jake is, and I'm kind of going off of like just like a brief experience with this, is that like you talk with an agent, the agent recommends, the people that they work with, they send them the links to the person that ultimately is going to hire this illustrator, and they say, cool, I really like his work, send them to me, right? Because everything
Mhm.
else, all of that thought, all of that description, all of that conversation is being handled by the agent.
Mhm.
So someone like Jay can get away with this. But for you, you need to be your own agent. You need to be able to like sell people on like what it is you do, why you do it, how you do it, things like that.
Mhm.
Let's see what he has on Behance. Yeah, I mean, he just has like great, like I've always liked his work, but he also has just like great opportunities where like his illustrations being used on a label. So like he has all of that,
Right.
like, a nice mock of it, like, and
Mhm.
it's not even a mock. This is probably like a photograph, like a real
Right.
photograph,
Right.
so like that's all really important to have. And again, if we go back to like what you're doing, how like can we kind of like replicate some of this a bit? I would be like, we need more, copy on your website. We need to introduce yourself a little bit more. We need to put in perspective like the responsibilities you have at your full time, and that you're not just like, illustrating all day because like you have all this free
Mhm.
time.
Mhm.
Is there anything on here specifically that like is your favorite that you'd want me to click on and look at?
Um, my favorite, I mean, honestly, the gumbo, like my favorite like page, honestly, not really. Um, I kind of at a certain point was like, I'm so done with this. I don't want to do it anymore.
Sure,
So,
yeah.
uh, but yeah, it honestly goes like the top is my favorite, and then the bottom goes to like not as favorite. I mean, there's a lot of work that isn't even on here. This is just like actually like all my favorite work that I've done completely.
Sure. Think of it this way, right? When you're going into like an interview, you're gonna have X amount of time to talk about your work. And if you like, you should have like 3 projects that'll probably take around like 5 to 10 minutes each to talk through, right? Like, what are those projects and where are those on here? Because again, like, just because like you're in the interview and like you're in like a different setting doesn't mean like that whatever that thing is that you present to them shouldn't also be the thing that you're presenting on your portfolio website, right? Like
Hmm.
if like there was a time where basically I had a PDF that I would send to for jobs, and I would basically just roll with that because like I didn't even really send my website. And after a while, I just replicated those two to kind of like still feel the same because, if I didn't have the opportunity to print the PDF out, or like they would prefer to just look at my website, I still wanted to be able to go through each of those 3 projects that I knew I was going to talk about and speak about them in the same way. And
Hmm.
you should kind of like use your portfolio website in that way, where if you didn't have anything to print out or bring with you and they were like, okay, show me your work, if I were to show them this, you'd kind of be you might be all over the place, right? Like, oh, like here's a project I did for this thing I support. This one's a little bit more. So like maybe that's not a good example, but like for example, like, yeah, this is a gumbo thing that I did.
Hmm.
And like they would have to then start to ask you questions to really draw the information out of you.
Hmm.
Whereas if you had, like maybe the first magazine of the year as like that first project you talk about, you could probably pull out 3, 4, 5, 6 different points that you actually touched on that you can talk about without them even having to ask you anything.
Hmm. Okay.
So yeah, so yeah, does that make sense? Let's
Yeah, absolutely.
Any questions you want to go over before we sign off? I mean, is there anything specific to your portfolio that you want to know about or talk about or have any questions about?
Honestly, I think you covered all my general questions and gave me more than I like would have thought on my own. I mean, some of the things like I really did already think on my own. Like I knew that I know I have to have more like actual like photos or just something more interesting. And like that's kind of why I also included like the gifs because it just adds some movement. But like I knew that I had to have photos and I just haven't done it because I hate working on it. But um yeah, no, I really you mentioned that you've been like doing freelance for like a year now. So
Yeah, like
what
officially full time.
so what how's that been for you?
It's been pretty good.
Are you doing like
I've
you're just doing design?
just doing design. Yeah. I've always like freelanced after hours, like while I worked a full time. And I knew eventually I would come to the point where I would be so sick and tired of like taking, just doing work for other people that I'd want to do it. And so
Mhm.
last year I decided to. Um, and I'm actually doing my taxes right now and looking back at like what I did for my first year, and it was pretty good. Like at the end of the day, right now for me, I will say this, like, yes, I'm freelancing and I'm taking on clients kind of like on a rolling basis as like when they come up. Um, it's paying for my lifestyle right now. Like I don't live in New York anymore. I don't have rent to pay. Well, I kind of do. But like I'm traveling a lot right now. I'm traveling and I'm trying to like build, you know, different ideas up and businesses. So as long as I can afford to do that, like it's fine. When I need to like actually go out and seek more clients, like I will be full in heads down on that. But in terms of like getting clients for the first year, I think within the first couple of weeks of officially leaving my job, I had locked in like one client that was a couple of months of work. I locked in two more clients when I went to Spain that I was working on like a different time zone, and a few other projects here and there. And that got me through the year. That afforded me my quote unquote lifestyle.
Mhm.
So again, like as long as I can do that, that for me is enough. Because again, in the background, I'm building out these other things that I've wanted to work on for years now. Um, would I have recommended it to someone? Do I recommend freelance to someone who is younger, earlier in their career? Not necessarily, because
Definitely
like,
not. Definitely
yeah,
not.
it is like, not only is it like it's a thing that like digs up a lot of emotions that when you're younger you just don't have the capacity to really understand and deal with, and you freak out, and then like that puts you in a downward spiral is the best way I can describe it. It's not so much that it's like difficult, but you learn so much more by like working and getting that experience and like learning how to like deal with conversations that you've never heard before as like a young 20 something year old creative. And so like I tried it when I was like, I think I had like a 6-month contract out of school, and then I freelanced for like one client for like 3 months. And I like hated my life because they were just so difficult to deal with. I didn't know what I was doing in terms of like how to facilitate those conversations. And it was really hard. And that is not like the place that I would recommend for people to go, and just start doing out of the blue. Like it's
Mhm.
definitely really hard to handle that, like financially, emotionally, and intellectually.
Yeah, I pretty much what I expected what it would be like right now, but that's why I haven't um done anything about the situation I'm in.
Sure, yeah. Yeah,
So
it happens. It
yeah,
happens. It happens to all of us.
yeah, get through it.
But you're in New York, there's so many like amazing companies and agencies and studios that, like you're in the right place to be, looking around and trying to figure out like where's the next move. So like don't
Mhm.
be too hard on yourself in that sense.
It's a very good point.
Do
A
you
little
live in Brooklyn
difficult.
or do you live in Manhattan?
I live in Brooklyn. Yeah.
Okay, where in Brooklyn?
I live in Bushwick and I work in Williamsburg.
Oh, nice. So that's an
Yeah.
super easy
Yeah.
commute.
It's fantastic.
What's, if you don't mind me asking, what is the company?
It's called Star Chefs.
Star Chefs. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can walk any neighborhood in Brooklyn and knock on some like warehouse and stumble into a studio and be like, "Hey, how are you guys doing?" You know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's a good place to be as a creative. It could be a little bit difficult and hard sometimes, especially like financially,
Mhm.
but as long as you stay persistent, like you will come out on the other side and what I would say in a better place. Depends on what
Mhm.
that looks like
Yeah.
for you.
Yes. Thank you so much. That this was super helpful.
Any other
And
questions or anything like that?
honestly, not that I have right now, but if I do think of something, would I be able to email you and ask? Is that okay?
Yeah, you have my email.
Cool.
Feel free to shoot me notes or send me an update, or if you have like an
Yeah.
update on the website and you want me to look at it, let me know.
Update on the website. It's going to take like 6 months. I am very slow when it comes to this.
Yeah, do yourself a favor, and this is something I recommended today as well. Like, if the website is too much, what do you have your website built in?
Squarespace.
Squarespace. Okay. If the
Yeah.
website is too much to handle because it is somewhat of a behemoth, it's okay to say like, all right, I'm going to shift my focus and still use this as like that, to like fulfill that need of like, what's your website URL, like on job
Hmm.
applications or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, but like shift focus to creating something that's going to be a lot faster for you to work with in terms of like a presentation, right? So everything that we talked
Hmm.
about in terms of like, maybe something about those 5 magazines that you publish each year, or whatever it may be, those big meaty projects, put it in something that is easy to share and easy for you to just kind of like churn through. So like something like Figma, I have recommended today that like we're slowly gravitating away from the idea of like uploading and sending PDFs. So whatever
Hmm.
tool makes that process easy to share as a link that people can just like really easily click through is like should be the thing. And focus on that, because I'm sure you're able to like churn through, Illustrator slides or Keynote slides faster than you are like updating your Squarespace website.
Hmm. Yeah.
And like let that be the thing that like you send out, or if it has a URL that's shareable, like there's your new website. There it is.
That's
Like,
smart. Honestly, that's really smart.
and
I didn't even know that was like an option.
yeah, like use Figma. It's like an Illustrator, but like all you have
Hmm.
to do is create slides. And, again, like it's as simple as creating like 1920 by 1080, laying everything out and, sending that off. But you're going to be a lot faster in a tool like that than you are like trying to like navigate Webflow and make it all fancy and work and stuff like that. So,
Okay, cool. Sounds good. Yeah. Thank you so
alrighty.
much.
I realized we had the screen shared the whole time. Anyway, you'll get an email about 5 minutes after this that just has like a few questions. If you don't mind filling those out, the quicker that you can fill those out and send them back to me, the quicker I can send you notes and where I should send those and the link to this recording. Okay.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle. It was nice meeting you.
Nice
Again,
to
keep
meet
me
you too.
updated and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thanks. Have a good day.
Cheers. Have a good one.